Hello, welcome to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News, and we are the news division of United Network. We're also part of CARE, the Center for Amity and Restoration of Earth, and our mission is to bring you the real news, what's really happening on our planet and even beyond. And we release a ton of content throughout the week. If you guys are members, you guys see this stuff immediately when it comes out, and that includes in-depth news coverage. The team and I work on stories for you guys. We have local stories told through the eyes of our field messengers. We talk about the restoration of our planet and how we're creating what we call the new Earth. And we have updates from the Global Intelligence Agency, which has access to some really important systems that let us know exactly what's going on. Even if mainstream media and alternative media aren't telling you the truth, you will get the truth here. What you're listening to right now, this is a podcast. I call it a week in review podcast because there is so much information coming out there. And because initially for the first week, the content we release goes out exclusively to our members. And then after that, it's released on YouTube and Rumble. I like to have a way to get you guys the information and at least give you highlights without you needing any kind of membership. And I like to get it to you guys as quickly as possible. So this is kind of what we've come up with. And it's also a great way to catch up on stories you may have missed, or if you want to share UNN with other people. But with anything that we put out there, I always encourage you guys to use your discernment, think critically, ask questions, do your own research. And I know a lot of you don't just listen to the stuff we put out, but you're curious and you want to know what else is going on, and you watch other YouTube channels or perhaps other podcasts. And I think that's great. Just continue to use your own discernment and figure out what rings true for you. And that doesn't mean that, even with some of the stuff we put out there, if it doesn't quite sit right, it doesn't mean the information is off. It means that you're in a place right now, maybe that information is not helpful to you. And I've shared this story before, but when I first started hearing some of Kim's reports, Kim with the GIA, a lot of it didn't make a lot of sense to me. A lot of it went against my core beliefs at the time, and I couldn't accept it in its entirety. And it wasn't until several years later where I discovered other things away from that information, just through other sources and through my connection to source, that I realized, my other beliefs really weren't working for me. I don't need those belief systems anymore. And I move on to other things. And that's what I would encourage you to do, because the information we put out there, we're giving you the truth, and the truth is a lot different many times than what we see in our day-to-day reality. And because of that, there can be a lot of cognitive dissonance of what's really going on here, right? And a lot of people can say, that's not true because I'm not seeing things happen. What's really interesting now is we're going to talk about this more, when we get to the information for the GIA report. The stuff that Kim is covering now is happening in the news. They're just giving you a different story of what's going on. But again, if you're tuned in and if you're connected to source, and a lot more people are coming online, and when I say online, I don't mean on the internet. I mean their senses are fired up and they're reconnecting to source, and they're starting to realize that this whole system is off and it's starting to crumble. And we have an opportunity to build what we really want to live in, a place we really want to live, not what, something that was created for us to keep us as slaves. And if you guys know the history, we were all slaves, all of us. Doesn't matter the color of your skin. You're all a slave. You were all a slave, myself included. But when you wake up to what's happening, they can't keep those shackles on you anymore. You are now free in a sense, so much more free, right? And now it's just a matter of taking down the systems that have been keeping us all in bondage. And we're going to talk more about that because there's a lot to discuss on what's happening politically in our world. We'll get to that in a second. But I appreciate you guys being here today and for checking out UNN and learning a little bit more about us. So let's go ahead and get to those stories. Here's the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. We always kick off this podcast with our field messenger reports. And our field messengers, they're kind of like citizen journalists. If you've never heard of field messengers, that's kind of what I equate it to. You don't have to have any experience to become a field messenger. I guess that might be the slight difference between it. You don't need any kind of training. You don't need special equipment. In fact, most of us have phones that have much higher quality, at least when I was in the news business, because I did work in traditional news at local TV stations for a while. I don't know. I haven't done a direct comparison, but I would guess that my cell phone that I have now is probably higher quality than the video. Those big cameras I was carrying around, fresh out of college. So, point being, the technology is there. And we really just need you guys to share what's going on in your communities. That's what being a field messenger is all about. We have weekly meetings, and depending on where you're at in the world, because, we have people from all over the place watching our content, which is great because the information affects our entire planet. And so we have weekly meetings. For me, I'm on Pacific time in the U.S. It is Sunday. I believe it's at 3 o'clock on Sunday Pacific time. But point being, we have these meetings that take place because we want to get more people involved. And we talk about story ideas and anything that you're considering doing for your reports. We also have a Telegram group that you can post to anytime and get help with your reports. And then you guys go out there, tell your reports, you send us the raw information, and we've got a great team, a production team that puts it together for you. So you don't need to know anything about editing. It's really just, you guys are the eyes and ears of what's really happening on this planet, especially on a local perspective. There's no way we could be everywhere. I know the news tries to do that, but the news has the, agendas behind it. The mainstream media has agendas. So if you really want to find out what's going on, why not just turn to the people? We have to start talking to each other again. And that's what it means to be a field messenger. So again, if you want more information about this, you can go to our website, unitednetwork.earth. We've got a section for field messengers, and I encourage you guys to give it a shot. Try it out. We'd love to see you at one of our meetings. Okay, so we're going to kick things off with Dorothy in Montana. So Dorothy shares a beautiful story about how it was just a few years ago in 2022, there was severe flooding in her town. She's from Red Lodge, Montana, and that's not too far from Yellowstone National Park. And there was crazy flooding in the area. She was directly impacted. She even shares her story of kind of getting caught up in the waters, and people had to pull her out of the water. She stayed with people she didn't even know for a few weeks while she was able to, kind of get back up on her feet. And it's a beautiful story of the kindness of strangers, the kindness of others, and how that leads to recovery, revitalization. She shows us her town now. She literally, I think, is driving in a car and just showing us, it just looks like a normal town now. And they all came together and helped one another. And I think she said, and I believe she was just talking about her place, but it cost like $100,000 to rebuild a portion of her place. And she just had a lot of help, And it really helped her realize, first of all, the importance of just helping people in your community, but also that stuff is just stuff. And I think we're entering a time, and it's not a scary time, at least it doesn't have to be a scary time, where a lot of the systems that we have felt comfortable with in the past are going to fall away. Now, if you think you have to have all of these systems in order to make it or in order to have a good life, then that's going to be difficult for you because you're going to be constantly wanting to get those systems back. But if you let those things fall to the side because again, using your discernment, that there is a better way to live, then this can be a very exciting time. And that's really what I took away from Dorothy's story, is that it was scary for her for this flooding, but so many beautiful things came out of that. And I think it's a great lesson for us today in what's to come. So thank you, Dorothy, for that reminder. Emma out of Spain. We've got a couple of reports from Emma because she's so awesome. And she loves to release reports, and we love her reports. In this first one, she's talking about pomegranates. And I have to tell you, my daughters, this is their favorite fruit. And whenever I get pomegranates and bring them home, I see smiles from ear to ear. And I think they just like, I don't know, they like the little seeds. If you don't know what a pomegranate is, it's kind of at least when I get them, I guess they can kind of be green on the outside, but I usually get them when they're more reddish. But it's pretty much all seeds when you open it. And you've probably heard of pomegranate juice. It has more of a sour flavor to it. But these seeds are really fun to eat, especially for kids. But they're packed with vitamins, antioxidants, gut-friendly goodness. They can also help with things like inflammation and protect us against certain diseases. And Emma, lucky duck, has one, I believe, in her yard. How fantastic is that? She says her tree produces about 30 of these fruit every year. And it's really cool. She showed us the flowers too. And this is one of those trees or plants. Fruit actually comes out of the flower. So when you see the flowers start to form, actually becomes the top part of the fruit. And it kind of looks like a flower at the top, but I didn't know it actually came from a flower. So anyway, a great report from Emma, packed with really good information. John, out of Australia, in the Singleton area of Australia, takes us to one of the world's largest sundials, which is pretty much in his backyard. And if you didn't know anything about sundials, this is a good report because he's got a lot of background. He shows a lot of really good aerial views of what a sundial looks like and how it's built. And he even went out and did some testing. He had some tools to be able to tell if it was lined up properly, and it pretty much is. But there was also another side to this, because sometimes do you ever see sculptures or weird stuff and you're like, what's the story behind that? Why did they put that right there? It's just kind of weird. Is that just for artistic sake? What's going on? Now, I think this sundial was put in his town as some sort of anniversary for the town. I can't remember what year. But it was an important occasion for the town, and they kind of, marked it with this sundial. But as it turns out, there's always a story behind the story, that sundials also have a big history with Freemasonry. Freemasons are known as builders, right? So it kind of lines up, right? You got to kind of know what you're doing in order to create an authentic and sundial that actually works. So you got to know things about degrees and how to line things up, north, south, east, west, all that good stuff. So it makes sense that it's connected to them. There are some symbols all around the structure, like the all-seeing eye. And I guess it costs quite a bit of money, which I'm kind of wondering why. It was built from rock, and I'm not really sure why rock would cost if they build it today, which it's an older monument or older sundial. But if they build it today, he said it would cost $1.2 million. I'm like, how? I got some guys that can put it together for a lot cheaper. No, just kidding. But anyway, again, always a story behind the story. And this is the story of this sundial in Singleton. Ichiro out of Japan talks about herbicides, however you want to pronounce that, including Agent Orange, which we know has been used in wartime. And the problem with this, and we've done news stories on this too, but the problem is that when you put this stuff out there, whether it's just on the ground or specifically on plants, it doesn't just stay there, right? It flows. It gets into our ground. It floods our, oceans. It contaminates everything, including, once it gets into the water, seafood. And that's really what Ichiro's story is about, and how he's encouraging people to really not eat, especially in his area, the tuna, the seafood. He says places are popping up all over the place for sushi. And he just doesn't trust it. He thinks there's a lot of high toxicity in the fish because of these herbicides, and that can lead to cancer. So I would agree with him. I've never been a sushi person. Maybe this is my spirit telling me, Sonny, don't eat the raw fish. Just stay away. All right, Amy out of New Jersey has a local story about some signal lights that have been put up in her area. It's part of a statewide improvement program. It includes traffic lights and some other areas to help people in wheelchairs, people that might be disabled. And so she gives us an update on that. Have you ever wondered, this actually just happened to me the other day, as I was stopped at a stoplight and I'm thinking, it's kind of I won't call it a mindless task, but when you're stopped there in your car, it's like you just wait for a light to turn and then you go. And I'm getting all philosophical as I'm sitting at the light and I'm going, gosh, this is just training us to be so obedient, isn't it? I don't know, guys. Am I taking it too far? But I kind of feel that way. Yes, there was a safety element of it. And we've had other field messengers in the past report on how there are other cities out there, a lot of them, I believe, in Europe, where they don't even use traffic lights. And it's more about roundabouts, right? Circles and people just not being in such a hurry and paying more attention. And I don't know, like I do appreciate the safety of signal lights because there's a lot of people out there that are looking at their phone and not looking at the road. But part of me is also like, there's a better way to do it. But I do appreciate the cities that are putting more effort into helping the people in their town. And so thank you, Amy, for your report on that. CJ out of New Hampshire. I got to try this recipe, CJ. She shows us how to make, instead of peanut brittle, which if you've ever looked at the ingredients for peanut brittle, holy cow. I actually made it one year for the state fair. Actually, not the state fair. It was our local fair, but it was like the county fair, right? And I had cousins that were always submitting really good, like they were like homebodies and, ag people, and they were doing all this really cool stuff. And so they're like, oh, you should submit something for the fair. And I'm like, okay, I'll make peanut brittle. You guys, my peanut brittle was bendable. It was not brittle at all. Anyways, that's my own personal story about trying to make peanut brittle. But the ingredients in that are pretty disgusting, even if you're making it at home. High fructose corn syrup. I remember literally adding that to the recipe, obviously way before I knew what that could do to your body and the inflammation it creates and things like that. But I have to try CJ's recipe. So she shows us how to make what she calls nut and seed brittle. And she just combines all these organic seeds. Think of any kind of nut. I mean, she had pumpkin, she had cashew, lots of good stuff packed in there. She used honey, chia seeds, which she mixed with some water, and it created kind of a little paste to keep everything together. She sprinkled some salt on the top, and I believe it was Celtic salt. So, I mean, I have all these ingredients, you guys. I have to try this recipe. And you just bake it, and it creates this kind of brittly, nut, salty, sweet taste to it. So anyway, got to try it, and I'll let you guys know how it turns out. Rick he's not from Kenya, but Rick's usually from Arizona. That's where he lives, and he's usually reporting out of Arizona. But he took this incredible trip to Kenya, and I've reported on this before. He submitted stories about this previously. There might even be more coming. I'm not sure. He had this incredible trip where he went to Nakuru, I believe it's pronounced, Kenya. And man, the wildlife that he saw. So in this story, he's going on a safari and he hops in this Toyota kind of truck, which I think Rick wants his own Toyota because he seemed to be really excited about this truck. And they went out and saw all these amazing wildlife. We saw lions like right close to the truck. There were rhinos, giraffes, a lot of different birds, flamingos were there. And I think at the end of the story, we saw a monkey. Just absolutely incredible, and makes me really want to go check that stuff out for myself. It was called the Lion Hill Lodge, if you guys want to look it up. All right, another story from Emma out of Spain, and this time she is talking with a friend of hers, her name is Christina, about how Christina got started making her own natural skincare products. And I love this story because Christina is a mom, and she started making these products because of her daughter's health. I think she said her daughter had eczema, and they were saying, oh, well, you got to do all this stuff and all this pharmaceutical stuff. And she's like, yeah, I don't want to do that. My daughter's, super young. Like we're talking like weeks old. Like why would you want to do that to a baby? Why would you want to do that, period, right? But especially to a baby. And so this mom got super creative and started testing stuff out. And she says now, even when she releases new products, she tests it out on herself. And this, I guess she has some friends that are willing to help her out as well and test. But I just love this. It's made with all natural ingredients, super simple, goat milk, honey, essential oils. I have to tell you guys, I switch soaps. I don't have sensitive skin, but I have been a lot more mindful on anything I put on my body and inside my body. And I switched about a year ago, I think it was. I went to a farmer's market and I switched out my soap, which I was getting soap that was supposed to be good for you. Like I was getting it from an organic place. But I was like, I want to support local businesses. So I started buying from this place. It's owned by like two women. They go to all these farmers markets, and their soap is made out of goat milk. And I absolutely love it. And they add essential oils to it, and I get like their little sampler. So I've made a complete switch to soap used with goat milk. I also love beeswax and pretty much anything that's made with bees. And I got this really awesome, it's kind of in a traditional shape of like a deodorant bottle, but you rub it on your feet and it has beeswax in it. Oh my gosh, one of my favorite things to do is get out of the shower and put some really comfy socks on. But before I put the socks on, I roll this beeswax all over my feet and it just keeps all the moisture in there. Oh, I love it. But point being, this is all about natural beauty and I love it. And I love that Christina, the person that makes this, is doing it. And it all started because her daughter needed some help. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this. All right, Sophia out of Germany takes us to the Weltenberg Monastery, and it looks absolutely beautiful. It's like you're ripping a page right out of history here. And she tells us more about the monastery. It's in a really interesting location because there is a river, and it's at the river's bend. So it's kind of like at a point. Imagine a river kind of bending, and then you've got a point there where it bends. That's where the monastery is, and it's very interesting. There's a brewery right next to the monastery. And at first I thought, that's a little strange. I don't know if you'd really see that nowadays. But, every culture is a little bit different. I think it makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't mind, checking things out and then going over to the brewery. There's a church there, obviously. And what's neat about this, it was kind of built around this rock. So you see a lot of natural rock formations within the monastery. Again, one of these things, these videos, they just have to see for yourself. All right, moving on to some of the stories the team and I have been working on for you guys this week. Starting off with something that I feel personally connected to because it's something that I'm experimenting with, and that is peptides as an alternative to more pharmaceutical drugs like Ozempic. So you guys have heard of Ozempic probably, right? It's kind of this rapid weight loss. It's supposed to look effortless. But here's the thing, a surge of patients started having severe side effects. And that includes everything from chronic nausea to stomach paralysis, fueling lawsuits and growing concern over these GLP-1 drugs. And they're commonly known by names like Ozempic, Wegovy, Zepbound. So if you've heard of those, that's what we're talking about. As reports of fake formulations and long-term risks mount, researchers and wellness experts are turning their focus to a new frontier, injectable peptides. Unlike the GLP-1 drugs that slow digestion, these naturally inspired molecules aim to retrain the body's own metabolism, regulate hormones, appetite, and energy without harsh side effects.
So what are peptides? Peptides are short-chain amino acids. And amino acids in your body are the worker bees. They do all kinds of things from metabolism to tissue regeneration to hormone secretion and everything in between. Your body produces over 7,000 different peptides itself. And when these peptides are taken in isolation, usually injected, sometimes with a nasal spray, sometimes orally, they have some very interesting drug-like, hormone-like effects. What many people assume is that peptides, they must be safe because our body makes them, but this is a misunderstanding. There are lots of natural things that are very dangerous. Peptides have the potential to be really interesting. In fact, there are some that are life-saving, but they also have the potential to be very dangerous.
That is something that I would stress, you guys. Make sure that if you decide to go down this road, that you're working with someone that you trust, that has experience with this, whatever that looks like for you. There's a lot of information online. There's a lot of stuff on social media. I wouldn't trust it all, right? So make sure you feel comfortable with whoever's giving you this information, because the peptide market, it's still a mix of science and hype. So advocates say it represents a smarter, more holistic way to manage weight, one that works with the body instead of against it. And personally, that's why I decided a couple weeks ago, I started experimenting with it. I wanted to make sure whatever I did, I kind of wanted to wake up the body, right? Because I know my body's supposed to function better than it is. And I don't want a Band-Aid over the situation. I want my body to remember what it's supposed to do. And for me personally, and I'm not endorsing, this for you, but for me personally, this is a step that I felt was right for me. So if you're interested in this, start doing some research and talk to people that you trust. All right, let's talk about India, because they're doing a lot with their lake restoration. Their lakes were once vital sources of water, food, and livelihood, but they have suffered decades of neglect, pollution, and overuse, losing nearly 40% of their wetlands in the past 40 years. Now, a growing movement to restore these ecosystems is showing real promise. From Kashmir's Wular Lake to Bengaluru's community-led revivals, projects combining traditional knowledge, modern technology, and grassroots participation are bringing life back to drying water bodies.
After 30 years, Kashmir's Wular Lake is blooming again. The pink lotus, or locally known as Nadiru, once lost under silt from 1992 floods, has returned to life. Thanks to desilting and conservation, lotuses are back, and with them, hope. Hope for food, income, and nature. Wular isn't just scenic, it's a lifeline, a home to 213 waterbird species on the Central Asian Flyway, making it a vital ecological hotspot. But Wular is just one. Across India, many rivers and wetlands like Delhi's Yamuna wetland, UP's Pili Nadi are crying for care.
Studies show that strong local involvement and smart policies can reverse even severe damage. Leaders like Dr. Rahendra Singh, the waterman of India, and engineer Anand Maligavad are proving that determined citizens can turn barren lands into thriving ecosystems, one restored lake at a time. Electric vehicle charging stations are facing a surprising crime wave, and that is cable theft. Thieves are targeting charging cables for their copper. That's what they say, even though the metal's resale value is low and difficult to extract. The damage, however, is costly. Broken chargers leave EV drivers stranded, disrupt operations, and burden charging companies already struggling with high expansion costs. Experts suspect some thefts stem from anti-EV sentiment as well.
Many of the cables have been stolen from the Fatima supercharger early this morning. This is particularly upsetting in Portugal because they've just added new chargers a couple of weeks ago. They were online, needed, and we've fought for years against the Portuguese government to change the law. So now we're not fighting the Portuguese government, now we're fighting thieves just 2 weeks after. So I don't know how bad the situation is currently in Portugal, how many cables have been stolen, but I've heard of other reports of other places where cables have been stolen. So yeah, the situation is absolutely atrocious.
To fight back, companies are adding tamper-proof locks, steel-reinforced cables, real-time monitoring, and GPS tracking. Still, every stolen cable has an environmental cost, wasting energy, materials, and fueling illegal scrap markets, raising serious questions about how to protect the growing EV infrastructure critical to a cleaner future. Well, have you seen this? YouTube creators recently discovered something unsettling. The platform has been quietly using AI to enhance videos without their knowledge or consent. Subtle tweaks like smoother skin, sharper details, and richer colors made some creators feel like they were seeing filtered versions of themselves. After weeks of speculation and mounting online backlash, YouTube confirmed it had been running an AI experiment, that's what they say, on select shorts, so the YouTube shorts, to sharpen and denoise footage.
So I don't know if you guys have seen this yet, but YouTube has been using AI to edit users' videos without their knowledge and without their permission. But what is YouTube up to with using AI and machine learning to edit people's videos that they upload without their permission and without their knowledge? It's bad enough that when you scroll through a lot of these apps, you have to watch all this AI-generated content crap anyway. But now to have a company as big as YouTube just editing your video, your art, your creations without asking you, without your permission, this is going way too far.
While the company says it's harmless, critics warn that these invisible edits blur the line between real and artificial, raising deeper concerns about consent, authenticity, and who truly controls what audiences see. For now, creators cannot opt out, leaving many uneasy about just how much the algorithm might be shaping our reality. Kenya's public transport system remains largely inaccessible for people with disabilities, leaving many unable to work, study, or participate fully in society. With nearly 1 million Kenyans living with disabilities, most rely on Matatus. It is these minibuses. They are these minibuses, I should say, but they lack ramps, wheelchair spaces, and other basic accommodations.
Zero.
There's nothing that's changed. Getting on a public bus is very difficult, almost impossible for someone with a severe disability. Maybe people with some capacity can board it with a bit of help. But when you have a severe disability like myself, boarding a public transport bus is almost next to impossible.
Despite new disability laws and advocacy from groups like the United Disabled Persons of Kenya, stigma and discrimination persist, with some drivers refusing service altogether. But there is some innovation out there. Daniel Gatura, he is the founder of Ace Mobility. Well, he is stepping in with accessible ride-hailing options, though high costs limit access. Promising projects like Nairobi's bus rapid transit system could make a difference, but there are delays and funding issues have slowed progress, keeping equal mobility just out of reach for many Kenyans. The sky may sparkle with satellites and streaks of light, but much of it is actually space debris. Old satellites, spent rocket parts, and collision fragments that can fall back to Earth. Traveling at extreme speeds, this junk poses risks to operational satellites, spacecraft, and even air travel, with studies warning of more frequent debris entering busy airspaces in regions like the US, Europe, and Asia Pacific.
The European Space Agency says for an individual, the chances of being injured by space debris is less than 1 in 100 billion. But despite this, there have been some close calls. Like this one in Florida. In 2024, a piece of debris discarded by the International Space Station 3 years prior crashed through the roof of a home in Naples.
That's definitely man-made.
Yeah, 100%.
NASA said it was part of a 5,800-pound cargo pallet containing batteries that was expected to fully burn up on re-entry. Incidents like these have forced space agencies and companies to re-evaluate re-entry models to better predict whether objects will burn up during re-entry.
Projects like SpaceX's Starlink add thousands of satellites, some of which re-enter the atmosphere early, potentially releasing metals that contribute to atmospheric pollution and ozone layer damage, as well as other things. As space activity grows, managing this debris and its environmental and safety impacts is becoming an urgent challenge, raising questions about responsibility and long-term solutions. As banks increasingly close physical branches driven by the rise of digital banking and high operational costs, Communities are feeling the impact of banking deserts, where access to financial services is limited or non-existent. While online and mobile banking offer convenience and efficiency, they can't replace the human connection needed for complex issues, trust building, or personalized advice.
The truth is that a lot of the services that are in an existing branch cannot be done through those substitutes. Even the banks themselves recognize that many of the things that you can do today in a branch, you won't be able to do when the branch closes, right?
Yep.
So it's another example of smoke and mirrors and trying to spin a story. Of course, the reason they're doing this is partly because of profit motives and of the fact that there's a cost. But a lot of it's because of the way the accounting's done, because, of course, the value of all the products is held centrally, whereas the costs are held down at the branch level. If they accounted for them properly, like, for example, some of the small community banks do, branches are actually profitable because people want to use them.
These closures hit low-income, rural, and minority communities the hardest, forcing many to rely on costly alternatives like payday lenders. Experts say the banks that succeed in the future will balance cutting-edge digital tools with skilled, customer-focused staff to provide both convenience and the personal support people still need. Have you heard of these adult summer camps? I think it sounds like a lot of fun. And a growing amount of adults are turning to them. So they could be camps, retreats, social clubs, and this is all to combat loneliness and build meaningful connections, with immersive activities helping friendships form faster than typical socializing. These experiences offer lasting benefits, from boosting creativity and social skills to fostering mentorship and a sense of belonging, while also providing a digital detox, everyone needs that, right? That reduces anxiety. Camps are especially impactful for adults with disabilities, sparking joy, resilience, and personal growth.
Can someone explain to me why adult summer camps aren't more popular? I just got back from co-hosting my first ever women's empowerment summer camp, and it was the most life-changing experience I've ever had. We had the best summer camp activities like a ropes course, horseback riding, hiking, yoga, and watercolors. But it was the women who came here that made it special. They said yes to traveling across the country to spend a weekend with a bunch of women they've never met before. And as scary as it sounds, it feels like we all immediately connected. I really feel like I left here with 40 new best friends.
Even for those who can't commit to full camps, local day programs or weekend retreats provide similar opportunities for community, shared experiences, and nostalgic fun, emphasizing that meaningful connection and personal growth can happen at any age. Biometric security, using fingerprints, facial scans, or iris patterns, is rapidly expanding beyond phones and airports into offices, schools, and homes, promising convenience and enhanced safety. Companies like JP Morgan Chase, Amazon, and Delta are implementing these systems, among others, while devices increasingly rely on biometrics for unlocking and payments.
One of the really unfortunate things that I see with most people is they really don't take their privacy or their security seriously, especially online. And I see way too many people voluntarily giving companies biometric information, and you really shouldn't do that. You should never give a company your DNA, your iris scans, your fingerprints, voice patterns, things like that, even typing patterns, anything that's an immutable characteristic of you. You should never give a company that, because that's personal information that people can use to do all kinds of negative things. And what happens when some malicious company or government entity gets a hold of that information?
Something to think about. Despite encryption and end-to-end protections, the technology raises serious privacy concerns, as biometric data is permanent and can be vulnerable if mishandled or hacked. While these tools offer efficiency and security, individuals remain responsible for managing access and understanding how their personal identifiers are stored and used. This balances convenience with control over highly sensitive information. All right, now it's time for some updates from the Global Intelligence Agency, or GIA. Kimberly Gogan is the head of the GIA, and There's a lot going on in our world right now, guys. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of this is starting to eke out into the mainstream media, although they kind of give you slightly different definitions for what's really going on behind the scenes, whether the news actually knows what's going on or they're just kind of naive or not wanting to know. Who knows what's going on there? But we're going to give you the truth here. So Kim put out one video report so far. I think she's planning to put out another report this weekend. But as of now, which is Saturday night, we have one video report. She also made a couple statements. So let's go ahead with the statements. The first one was released on Monday. If you want access to these statements that I'm about to talk about, they're all listed on the CARE Telegram channel. So I believe if you go to our website, you will find that link. You can also search on Telegram. Who knows if they've blocked us or whatever. You know what they like to do. But you can search for the Center for Amity and Restoration of Earth or CARE, and you should be able to find it there if you want instant access and not have to wait for these podcast episodes. So on Monday, this was Kim's statement. It's been a very busy weekend here. It appears the ballroom at the White House should be called a ballroom, ball spelled B-A-A-L. If you don't know, that is a demon. Calls have been flooding in from countries asking for funding, and it still appears their intentions are not above board. We are in the middle of our own operation, which should complete overnight, so I will give you a full update later tomorrow, she says. But things continued on Tuesday. She wasn't able to put out a report, but she did release this statement. The deep state got caught with their crypto pants down last night as they tried desperately to issue stablecoin. Someone may have cornered them, so there was no way out. And then in parentheses, she says, who would do such a thing? Today has been more about us peeling back the facade in many ways. The energy should be clearer today. I've got a bit of work to do tonight, and I've been working for 15 hours so far. Should be able to take a break tomorrow afternoon to do a report. And indeed, she did. So the video this week came out on Wednesday. And a couple things that she mentions off the top. So we know Trump is in Asia. We talked about that during last week's rundown. And the real main reason he and his team of operators were over in Asia, and it had nothing to do with peace talks and all the other stuff that he was allegedly there for. It was about power, right? You can go back and listen to last week's report if you want to know about the Asian woman who was supposed to be given all this power. And let's just say she's not with us anymore, and that is not going to happen. But while Trump was over there, Kim showed us some video of how South Korea is basically bowing at Trump's feet, offered him some medal and a crown. Oh boy, like this guy needs a crown, right? Didn't we just have some protests, some no king protests here? Like this is not helping our cause, South Korea. But Trump is telling people behind the scenes that he's going to be some sort of king. The Asian woman didn't work out. And the whole deal with Korea and them giving him this award, right, this medal, this crown, is because he thinks that Trump is going to help them get some of their heritage money back that's in an off-ledger account. Kim confirmed that money has no allocation numbers. So let's talk a little bit more, because it seems to be kind of, it's kind of a confusing thing, right? Because what they put out there as far as how our financial system runs is way different than how the system actually runs. And it's even more complicated than that because the old system is not the new system. So what our financial system is running on now is not what it used to run on, thank goodness, because things have changed. And Kim is the primary person that has changed those things alongside working with God, source, creator of the universe, to make this happen. And that's because she's the guardian of the planet for now, okay? So let's talk a little bit more about, she made some comments, what was it, on, I think it was Tuesday's statement. She was talking about how the deep state got caught with their crypto pants down. I am not a crypto person. I know very little, but I did do some research into this stablecoin. So if you look it up online, if you have no idea about stablecoin, it's typically a way a lot of people get into using cryptocurrency, okay? Because you can trade in your regular money or fiat money, stuff that's not cryptocurrency, okay? You can trade that in for stablecoin, and they use a lot of trickery in what they say and do, and it's called stablecoin for a reason. It's supposed to be stable. It's supposed to get that word into your brain so you believe cryptocurrency is stable, at least this particular form of currency, of cryptocurrency. Now, I've said this before, but if you're new, crypt means dead, okay? So cryptocurrency is dead money. That there should tell you that it's not good. There are so many holes in cryptocurrency. They say, oh, it's unhackable. No, it is not. This thing, according to Kim, she said this, I think, in the report. It has more holes than Swiss cheese, okay? Do not get into cryptocurrency. I know people have made money. I know they can get in and get out. It is not where I would put any of my money ever. Okay, but I want to talk a little bit more about cryptocurrency and some things that they're trying to do now, because they're trying to get a lot of people to buy into this stable coin, and they don't have good intentions. So here's Kim talking about some of the schemes that they're up to with regards to cryptocurrency.
So let's talk about schemes. So they've been trying to get enough cash, because in order to exchange something on a 1-to-1 ratio, you must have the other one. I mean, we know that the NSA can make a stable coin be valued at whatever they want. We know that they can make as many stable coins as they want because it's an NSA DARPA run program. However, in order to exchange 1-to-1 to the US dollar, you have to limit yourself to a few things. Number one, the amount of US dollars in circulation. Number two, those have to be under your custody. And remember, quite a while ago, banks do not have custody of the dollars that they have on deposit. The same goes for central banks at this point. If that dollar is in your bank account, it is your dollar. So then they tried to install or cash in some fake super notes with allocation numbers. They also pulled many old allocation numbers, both on the front end and on the back end of the banking system, from the Federal Reserve, claiming that this would work. So they're going to register or re-register these allocation numbers to the system. Now, just to give you a brief background here, when a dollar shows up on your bank account as a digital dollar, you see it as $1 or $10. However, what is behind that $1 that's on your bank account, or peso or RMB, is an allocation number. Now, there are allocation numbers on dollar bills, and there are also allocation numbers that are digital. In fact, there is more than one allocation number behind that $1 that is on your bank account. In fact, there are 9 allocation numbers that run through varying systems, from a quantum AI system all the way down to your bank account, where you just see the dollar. There is also a backside system to the banking system that is encrypted, and it's encrypted 9 times over. Now, allocation numbers, your bank account number, your name, and your address is not in the same language as it travels through the levels of the banking system. On a quantum level, it is written in very odd and strange symbols that even the deep state doesn't have access to and has never had access to change that language. They see things in numbers on the level that they have access to. Those numbers equate to a frequency. They also see things in binary code, and then they see things in actual computer language like JavaScript and Python and these types of things. So they don't actually have access to some of those base root languages that are behind those languages. And for that reason, when they try to enter in all these old allocation numbers that they screen scraped from the Fed and other numbers that would come through, you see the Federal Reserve is only on a level 6. In the banking system, there are 3 other language levels that existed beyond the Federal Reserve. And it's all on that level. It was always about, in the past, energy exchange. Energy exchanges are tied to covenants that are not written in any language known to mankind, for lack of a better term. So they made a strong attempt to try to enter these allocation numbers into the system, and the system rejected it, and it basically said these are not valid allocation numbers, and that is not a valid note, so to speak. And by not a valid note, yes, what they're doing is a scam. You know, you can't go back to 1938 and try to get some allocation numbers and re-enter them in the system because they think that they're not in the system anymore. So why not use the ones from 1938? I have to laugh because this is funny. Because you see, we're always a step ahead of the slow people there that think that they're going to pull one over on the world. So they try to enter these numbers in there and it fails. So now they've decided, in order to make this one-to-one cryptocurrency thing work in the numbers that they need. Now you're talking hundreds of trillions of dollars is what they quote unquote need. They started calling us here. Yep. We got calls from many countries around the world. It was like those commercials you see, at least we have them here in America, and where the sad puppies are crying in the shelter and they say, could you please just donate $1, to save a sad puppy, and they play these sad songs. Well, this is kind of what my life was like for about 24 hours because we were getting calls from, Asian countries, including South Korea. We got calls from America. We've gotten calls from many, many places, all in the span of about 24 hours. It was either me or Thomas Melville that received the calls. And it was all about, can we just issue a little bit of currency? We want to work things out. We've decided we want to work with you. And, I don't know if they think I was born yesterday, but I'm not.
Yeah, and Kim and her team got a bunch of calls this week. She started to talk about that in the last soundbite. But I want to play another soundbite that is specifically about the Treasury Department calling her, wanting her to pay the SNAP bill. So if you guys are unfamiliar with that, it used to be called food stamps here in the U.S., but it is a way for people who need food assistance. It's a subsidy, a government subsidy. And if you need help because your job is not paying you what it needs to pay you, or there could be a lot of reasons. You're on a fixed income, you have, children, and your job doesn't cover everything you need to pay for, food for your children. There's a lot of reasons people are on this program. In fact, 42 million Americans are currently on SNAP. And that's from both sides of the aisle, guys. I know it gets pushed off and being, it's a Democratic program. You have Republicans and Democrats on SNAP, receiving SNAP benefits. And it is going to expire today. It expired today, November 1st. And there's a whole story about why it expired. You can find a lot of information online about that, so I'm not going to get into that. But I want to talk about what the U.S. government is trying to do, because they don't have to cut off SNAP now. And if you look at the videos online, they're saying, there's this other fund that has billions of dollars in it. And that's not even what we're going to talk about. That may be true. I don't know if there's money in that account or not. But there's another thing that's going on behind the scenes here. And as it turns out, they've been issuing IOUs for SNAP for a long time. So why did this all of a sudden stop? Here's Kim explaining.
The Treasury called and they wanted us to pay the SNAP bill. to save people from starving, because by next month, they're not going to be able to continue this program. For those of you outside the United States, our SNAP benefit program is a program that is in part funded by the federal government at about 50% and by state government for the other 50%. The SNAP program is equivalent to a food subsidy program whereby qualified recipients, low-income recipients, are able to receive food benefits in order to help them feed themselves, their family, their children, and a lot of people do participate in this. It was much larger, obviously, during lockdowns and a few years ago than it is today, but there are a lot of people that depend on the program. It doesn't necessarily mean you're unemployed or you're even on state assistance, although a lot of the people are either on Social Security or disability or other, federal programs that receive these benefits. But also it's afforded to people that are working and maybe have children and they don't make enough money to support their family and they are below the poverty line, whatever that poverty line is in any particular state, because it's a state-by-state thing. So most likely you have a similar program in a country, in another country where you're listening. So here in America, our SNAP program and all of the benefit cards run through a company called Fiserv. And Fiserv is a very large company. Most of them run on the Atlanta, Georgia global rails. They also handle all of the Social Security direct deposits, a lot of the veterans' money direct deposits, and other government type subsidy programs, direct deposits that go to the average everyday consumer. Most of this money is filtered, and I'm going to say filtered, through the Treasury Department for said program, although I think it is sponsored by the Ways and Means Committee, who usually handles a lot of the social programs afforded to citizens by the federal government and state governments, such as health insurance for low-income persons in the country. So the Treasury Department tried to sell me on the fact that I need to pay this bill. All they really need is allocation numbers. And of course, if I were to open up the system and send out some allocation numbers, it would probably not work well, because all then I would have is a bunch of people trying to track back where they came from and then try to steal the currency or steal the allocation numbers, like they did in Santander Bank a few years ago. See, these people have a very short memory because I remember exactly what it is they do. Now, the SNAP program, Social Security, and other programs have been funded utilizing IOUs from the Treasury Department to varying banks and then off to Fiserv every single month. There has been an IOU issued, and they have been paying it exactly this way for a long time now, since the U.S. government is on the rocks. So that means they are, let's just say, many dollars short of their lofty goals. So why would this month be any different? This is my question. So now I'm watching these transactions happen. I'm watching the IOUs go from the Treasury Department to varying different banking institutions. Why all of a sudden are you not paying the SNAP bill? Now, I have to say they're full of it. The only thing they want is the American people to suffer. The program has existed for a long, long time in this country, and the only thing they care about cutting is something that is going to help and feed the people. So, in the event, I just want to stop here for a brief moment. In the event that something like this could possibly happen where they do not pay out food benefits. Anyone in the United States who's listening to this and may have access to a food bank or other type of program whereby people could get food, be prepared and be ready. And make sure the people in your community are aware that it is available. There are plenty of them out there in every single state, whether it be church programs or other programs run by other organizations. People are going to need food, especially holiday time food, should the federal government decide that this is a good idea to cut benefits and not for financial reasons. Sure, they're broke, but they've been paying with IOUs this whole time. I don't understand why they're not going to pay with IOUs this time. So this is complete and total, how do I say this, a lack of moral judgment on which programs should be cut.
Okay. One thing that I wanted to say about this, because I have been struggling with this for over a week now, because there's a lot of good people that are, in fact, all of us, at least here in the U.S., and I'm sure that trickles out to other countries, are impacted by the SNAP decision, because there is a trickle-down effect here. Just because you may or may not receive SNAP benefits, if, let's just say the grocer, right? So someone uses their SNAP benefits and they pay for food at a grocery store, but the grocery store all of a sudden isn't getting all that money they would get from the SNAP recipient. So it affects them and what they charge, and then whoever they typically pay money to. So we're all impacted by this on some level. It's just a matter of how quickly is it going to impact you. Right now, it's impacting the recipients the fastest because they're not getting the food that they would typically get. And it's a hard thing to kind of process, because part of me is like, oh, we need to step in and help, like as in care or whatever needs to step in and help. But the more I thought about this and really meditated on it, prayed about it, we're in a position now where these structures have to fall. And people have to see how corrupt these governments are. And they're really revealing themselves right now. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. And this is an excellent opportunity for us to develop new programs, but to step up and to help each other. And that's really what it's all about. That's what we're going to have to do moving forward, because I do not believe the government is ever coming back. And then once the U.S. government starts to fall, the other governments will fall as well. Now, that's not meant to be scary. Please don't take it that way. This is an opportunity, and it's an opportunity for us to rebuild and do things in a manner that actually benefits humanity, or Homo sapiens, however you want to say it, right? And so I was like, we got to do something. Yeah, the people need to do something. We as individuals need to step up and help. And unfortunately, sometimes you got to have situations like this that just shake you and are just like, it kind of wakes you up, literally wakes you up from people that are in this daze of, this humdrum life, that are just on the hamster wheel. If CARE or another group were to step in and just pay this, what are we learning from that? These systems don't work. Why do we even have to have subsidies? Why can't companies pay enough? It's the whole economy structure. It is not set up for us to be successful. It is set up against us. And this is an opportunity for us to take the reins back. But it's going to start with the individuals. We have to help each other. That may mean, donating at your local food bank, or just giving some groceries to your neighbor, or if you grow food, sharing that food with other people. This is an opportunity. It starts now. We have been talking about this for months. And in the U.S., it is starting literally today, guys, November 1st. It is starting now. And it's not something to be scared of. It's an opportunity to change how we've been living, because it's not working. Okay. All right. Next soundbite's really going to blow your mind. Have you been wondering what in the world is going on with Trump and his ballroom? Because this could not be more tone deaf. I do not understand Some of you guys know I visited Washington, D.C. with my family back in August, not that long ago, a handful of months ago. I'd never been to Washington, D.C., and I homeschool my girls. I wanted to see Washington, D.C. I wanted the textbooks to come to life for my girls so they could see it firsthand. Not that I was expecting much, but I did learn a lot. Got a lot of interesting feelings while I was there, too. But when I was there, the White House was in one piece. They had a west and an east wing, and now the east wing has been completely demolished to make room for this ballroom. And as Kim said in Monday's statement, it should be BAAL room. Ball, you can look him up. He's in the Bible. He's probably in a lot of different religious texts. It is a demon. And these people are willing to do anything to try to get control back over people, over the financial system. They don't care who they pray to and who they conjure up or try to conjure up. They are literally just trying to save themselves. They don't care about us. They want to save themselves. They want to keep power, right? And not just over their countries, right? Everyone's vying for power over the entire planet. So we have Trump that tore down the East Wing to build this ballroom, which we had a conversation behind the scenes on one of our Telegram channels with our news team, because someone posted a link about there was something on social media comparing the size of Trump's ballroom to Solomon's temple, and actually the whole courtyard, like the whole complex. Now, I have been to Israel. It was a long time ago. I think it was back in 2007. And I have seen the area that used to be where Solomon's temple was. You pretty much just have the Western Wall now. But as it turns out, the story of Solomon is not accurate. Solomon was a guardian of planet Earth. Kim has told us that before. So Solomon had Kim's job, and he decided to give up power. He wanted wisdom. And the Bible even says that Solomon was super wise. He had all this wisdom, right? And that came at a huge cost for humanity / Homo sapiens, because it put the guardianship, because we all have free will, in the hands of beings that did not have our best interest at heart. And so it makes you really wonder what all those sacrifices were and the construction of Solomon's temple. But bringing it to present day, I find it very interesting. And I actually ran some of these numbers myself based on information from the Bible. And I ran it through ChatGPT. So, I'm sure there's some errors there or whatever. But the footprint for Trump's ballroom is basically the same size as Solomon's temple. When you factor in the inner courtyard, the outer courtyard. So not just the structure in the center, where they did, the priest, went in and did whatever the priest does. Who knows what they were doing in there? But the whole footprint, right? So I find that very interesting. Now, it makes you wonder what's going on underneath. What was going on underneath Solomon's temple way back in the time of Jesus? I got a lot of questions about that, because Solomon is not, the wonderful king that is portrayed, I think, a lot in the Bible. But what is going on beneath this ballroom that Trump is planning to build, especially because it's being referred to as Solomon's third temple? Behind the scenes, you guys, you cannot make this stuff up. Now, if you are familiar with end time prophecy, Solomon's temple, the third temple, is supposed to be built. Now, it's supposed to be built over the footprint of where the original temple was constructed in Israel. So what's going on here? Isn't it 1700 Pennsylvania Avenue? Isn't that the address for the White House? What is going on at 1700 Pennsylvania Avenue? Kim has some insight, and it's from someone who is actually working on building some things under the ballroom. So this is firsthand information from someone who is under a gag order. So we have to be very careful with this, of what in the world is going on. This is going to blow your mind. Here's Kim.
Let's talk about this ballroom, that they're building off of the White House, because it's the weirdest situation. We're in the middle of a government shutdown. They're spending a lot of money on this ballroom. So I'm going to try to say this as lightly as I can, because this person has signed a gag order with the United States government promising not to reveal anything he or she has seen during his time or her time as a contractor for the ballroom off the White House. I'm going to just call this contractor. So contractor person has told us directly that they are installing an altar, some very sadistic paintings. There are very specific colors such as black, purple, and red that are being utilized in some of the rooms in and around this ballroom. The basement is basically being set up as a temple of sorts. Now, it's a temple. I have to laugh. I have to laugh. It's a temple because in this particular case, Trump believes he is going to be King Solomon, or king of the world, king of the empire being all of Earth, and this is going to happen in the next 24 hours. But they've been preparing for this now for quite some time. This is, they expeditiously built this temple. They are calling it behind the scenes the Third Temple of Solomon. For those of you that know religion well, you know that there's supposed to be a third temple erected, and then there will be peace and all of these types of things. But in this case, what is in the basement, according to an eyewitness, has nothing to do with peace. And quite frankly, this person is quite scared. They can't lose the job. They've signed a gag order and a commitment with the government, and they have to work there, but they don't really like what they're installing. And, this person's telling me that they're religious and that kind of thing, and this is just not right, and I can't believe we're here, and this is what's happening, and they're disgusted, actually. So we're just going to leave it at that. That's a contractor person that gave us that information directly from the inside. Not that we couldn't see what was going on there, but I do know that there is a ritual planned in this area because they're being forced to expedite that particular section as quickly as possible. My guess would be that's because we're coming up on All Hallows Eve, and there's probably going to be some men dancing around in skirts and God knows what there. But again, it's always good when people like that and of that caliber gather in the same location all at once now, isn't it? Might be an opportunity there.
Yes, ma'am. I believe there is an incredible opportunity, and I cannot wait to hear what happened on Halloween because, again, that was last night as of this recording. It's now November 1st. All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening to The Rundown today. If you want more information about who we are and what we do, all about United Network, visit our website, unitednetwork.earth. And if you decide to become a member, we appreciate you guys. We don't work with advertisers, so our members fund us and all of our efforts and everything we're able to do alongside our amazing volunteers. If you want to support us, consider becoming a member. When you do that, you get complete news updates, all of our New Earth interviews, the complete reports from Kim and the GIA, and everything we put out, all things restoration. This is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.